Thank you very much, Cornelius. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you very much for the invitation. I'd just like to comment historically a little bit. Maybe 7, 8 years ago, Egypt started facing a bit of energy shortage, both on the primary fuel side, and it was seen that that we have to resort to imports of oil fuel, natural gas over the next 15 years or so. And that sort of opened the window for renewables as well as for energy efficiency to take an important role in fulfilling our energy needs in Egypt. A number of scenarios were drafted, were calculated, as I said, around 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and that indicated that there is a potential to reduce our demand from energy, primarily from primary energy through energy efficiency implementations. And it is expected that we can reduce our energy demand by 8% by year 2022 from carrying on energy efficiency applications at the end user side. That 8% reflect around 20% of our current energy use in absolute values. The most promising sector to have energy efficiency implementations, first comes the industrial sector, where some of the energy efficiency potentials go up to 25%. The glass industry, for example. For the cement industry, we're speaking about 11% in their potential energy reduction as compared to the world average, which Egypt is part of it. In the steel industry, we're speaking about 20% reduction in their energy consumption for the same level of production. Comes after the industrial sector, the residential sector, and there is a lot of things which can be done. At the residential sector, we're speaking about building codes as well as using efficient type of equipment, white good equipment and efficient lighting, efficient refrigerators, and so on. There is a number of entities in Egypt who are addressing energy efficiency activities at the end user side. That include the Federation of Egyptian Industries. It include also the Ministry of Housing, and as well as the electric utilities in general, where the electrical utilities are looking primarily at demand-side management activities, where we're looking to shifting some of our peak load to off-peak durations, even though our peak load and our minimum load are becoming very close now together. So we're speaking about a peak load in the wintertime around the 23 to 24 gigas in winter. That jumps to 28 gigas in the summer, while the minimum load is less than that by only around 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. So we're very close to being a flat load regarding our energy use, electricity energy use. Additionally, the scenarios which were carried on did include a diversification of resources, different type of energy resources, as well as looking into interconnections. electrical interconnections and gas interconnections in the region. So we are speaking about interconnection around the Nile, the Mediterranean basin, as well as the Valley of the Nile, through all the way through the sources of water resources down in Middle Africa. So again, all these interconnections will cover a part of our needs. The most obvious one now is the electrical connection being planned or about to start execution between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Egypt, where we're speaking about exchanging 3,000 megawatts. And that should be online toward the end of 2018, early 2019. We're looking into other interconnections, given that there is certain technical requirements, technical challenges across the Mediterranean through interconnecting between Egypt, Crete, Greece, and interconnecting with Libya, Tunisia, and then Italy. All of these interconnection studies are still in a study phase. They did not reach the solutions from a technical point of view as well as a financial point of view, but they are part of the future plans. Having said that, and all of that would just cover part of our additional needs by year 2022. When I spoke about diversifying resources, it was found that even implementing all of these conditions, there will still be an additional needs which exceeds 35% of our need in year 2022. These needs will primarily be covered by solar energy. Wind was taken already into consideration. Solar energy would cover around 35% of our energy needs, primary energy needs. For solar energy projects, that would be divided between direct use of solar heating, especially in the industrial part, as well as in the domestic part, where we're speaking about preheating for some of the industrial processes, as well as, for example, solar water heaters in the households. And there is a number of legislations were issued by the Housing Ministry to enforce that, especially for the new buildings which are going to build in new communities. In addition to that, and in view of the scarcity of supply, the government showed its commitment to resort to renewable energies at large in a clear way, where a number of legislations were issued toward the end of 2014. There was 3 legislations issued, one of them indicating a feed-in tariff scheme with a target of 4,300 megawatts, 2,000 megawatts of wind, 2,000 megawatts of PV projects, large-size projects, and 300 megawatts of rooftop-type projects, with attractive feed-in tariff values. Also, the legislations, the issued legislations, were indicated the acceptance or the possibility of the New and Renewable Energy Authority, which is a state entity, to go into partnerships with the private sector in a flexible way in order to add competition in the market as well as to fulfill our needs. The other legislation, which was issued in December 2014, indicated 4 schemes to promote the supply side for renewables. That include 2 competitive bidding schemes, one of them to be issued, a competitive scheme following a BOO scheme, and that to be issued with the main off-taker, which is the National Transmission Company. And as we heard, the most recent, actually there is only one so far, a 250 megawatt, which is about to be signed at around 4 American cents per kilowatt hour. And that should be online in around 18 to 20 months. The second competitive scheme is an EPC plus finance scheme, which is carried on by the New and Renewable Energy Authority. This scheme is sorry, I must say that the BO scheme is targeting around 1,200 megawatts in addition to the 250 megawatt which I've just mentioned over the next 7 years, out of which 500 megawatts are the calls for them are out, and the short list for them is also indicated. 250 megawatt wind, 200 megawatt PV projects, and a 50 megawatt CSP project with storage of minimum 4 hours. The second scheme, the EPC plus finance scheme, is to be carried by the New and Renewable Energy Authority, and the target of that over the next 7 years is 3,200 megawatts, plus some additional few megawatts, out of which over the next 7 years, out of that 2,000 megawatt to be carried by Siemens. It's a sort of a company to a government agreement, and the plan for that is to be distributed in the Gulf of Suez area as well as in the West Nile area. In addition to that, there's a 1,200 megawatt of primarily wind projects with limited PV projects. The third scheme is the direct bilateral agreements scheme, and so far we have two projects in the pipeline. One of them is targeting 600 megawatts, and the other one is targeting 320 megawatts. Both of them are wind. Now, this scheme might be facing some of a bit of a rough start because they started primarily before the legislations were issued. So having to coexist with the new legislations is we need to iron some few things regarding the legislation in that regard. For the feed-in tariff, which is the most newest scheme and really the one which stimulated the market in Egypt over the last year, the solar project, the PV projects, the large size projects between the 20 and 50 megawatts are proceeding in a positive way, I would say. The wind is facing some slowdowns. The nice thing about that we really developed things while doing them. We have interacted very frequently and I would say very effectively with the developers, the financiers, while developing the documents, the related contracts and so on. And sort of the jewel of the crown of these documents is the power purchase agreement, which is in its final stages. We're primarily discussing that with the financiers, the international financiers and the national financiers, and we expect that to be in its final casted form sometime during February of this year. It will go early February to the State Council for final revision, just to make sure that it is not contradicting any of the existing legislation. In parallel to that, and in order to promote renewables, is that the general tariff, the tariff for all end users in Egypt, a program started 2 years ago. This program was to bring up the end user tariffs up to a cost reflective value, keeping in mind that there is some cross subsidies between underprivileged customers who cannot pay the real cost. That program will last up till 2019, and it will bring the tariffs to a cost reflective value based on a $3 per million BTU for the fuel cost. Again, that would help the promotion of renewables. What we need to add to all of this is really a demand-driving policies where we don't have that yet. All the legislations which were issued, and I guess that's something to a great extent common in many other countries, is that most of the policies do address the supply side rather than addressing the demand side. Something similar to incentives on the usage of renewables or a quota system and so on. That is yet to be formulated in the Egyptian context. In addition to that, I mean, just like day before yesterday, all of the legislations which were issued over the last couple of years regarding energy in general and renewables specifically were approved by the new parliament. So they were approved by the parliament and sort of agreed on with the energy committee with the new formed parliament in that regard. Our target is to have the renewable in the electricity energy mix at 20% by year 2022. And in order to achieve that, we're targeting 8 gigawatts in addition to the 2 gigawatts which we have in electric hydro energy. So the 8 gigawatts can be fulfilled from the announced programs, and that relies very much now on the response of the developers and the financiers to achieve their financial closures and so on, and in order to expedite the whole process. There is a number of potential socioeconomic developments, job creation, and so on with these programs. And our estimate for that is that we can reach around 4 jobs during the per megawatt for during the construction period, and around 1 job per megawatt as a permanent sustainable job over the lifetime of the projects. We are looking into the next steps now in order to further promote the renewable energies, and we believe that renewable energies will have a bigger share even than the target one. Also, we are developing between the with the regulatory agency, with the electrical regulatory agency and the New and Renewable Energy Authority, what we refer to as a quota system, an obligatory quota system to ensure the cash flow to the developers. That's in addition to the government insurances that the developers under any of the scheme will get their money. But also that cash flow scheme will reflect that each end user, based on the amount of the percentage amount of renewables injected into the system, and there will be a sort of a weighted average cost related to that, and end users will find that on their electricity bills on monthly basis. There will be few groups exempted. The lifeline customers, residential customers with consumption less than 200 kilowatt hours a month, and commercial customers with monthly consumption less than 200 kilowatt hours a month will be exempted from this obligatory quota, as well as the water supply for agriculture use. These customers will not be subject to the weighted average tariffs for renewables, but each customer will find on his bill, other than that, each customer will find on his bill a percentage reflecting the amount of energy, renewable energy injected to the system, to be shown in on his bill. The estimated weighted average cost so far is going to range in the early stages, maybe around 5 American cents to 6 American cents per kilowatt hour. Toward the end of the target 7 years, we're speaking maybe towards the 9 cents, somewhere between the 9 and 10 cents per kilowatt hour to be shown on the bill of each end user. That's in a way also moving the whole market into a more liberalized market and getting the end users to pay their dues based on the real cost of the electrical energy. Well, thank you very much for your listening, and I hope I will be around most of the day. I hope I can respond to any of your clarifications. And I keep on saying at the end of any of my talks that we cherished the sun 7,000 years ago, and we still do that. So thank you very much for your listening.
So please,
thank you for your presentation.
Please, could you kindly state your name and company?
Oh, okay. My name is Omar Majid Bedwawi. I'm actually UFL Leader Program. I'm a student from Master Institute. I want to ask you about the Nile River, where you generate like the electricity from it. I heard that maybe in Sudan or something like that, they had like a large power, more than they can expect it or something like that. Do you get useful from these kind of powers, the turbines in Nile? And if you get, if you benefit from this power, when will be like you get the 100th efficiency or the uses of this power?
Well, thank you very much for raising that. Definitely, we are looking at interconnection around the Nile with different potential hydro generation. keeping in mind that the electrical interconnection with these projects will help us cover a lot of our needs in an environmentally safe way, but also the impact of giving Egypt enough water supply for its irrigation needs and so on is a crucial thing. So we look into these things in a balanced way between our electricity needs as well as our water needs. It's not, I mean, maybe I will use this chance to comment on something is, well, some of the research projects in Egypt are looking into repumping the water after the high dam, I mean, going north, and repumping the water into the Lake Nasser through using PVs, as if it's a pump storage project. And we keep on saying we exhausted all our hydro resources in Egypt, around the 2,200 megawatts, but by doing that, we might be able to add an additional 1,000 megawatts. So yes, we definitely look positively into any of these projects. And thank you very much for raising that.
There is one question here submitted via iPad. You know, you can submit questions directly. So, and then we have a question here, but let's start. The question is a little bit unclear, but I understand that the question is on Egyptian companies' involvement on the wind side. So which Egyptian local companies are working on wind?
Well, there is a number of Egyptian companies, firms are working. Either basically they are either construction companies, and I guess we will be hearing from some of them today in the later sessions, and in the project of Siemens, which I guess also we'll hear about again, we're looking into this plant for manufacturing the blades, which will produce around 300 megawatts of size of blades annually to cover the 2,000 megawatts target of the projects of Siemens, and that will present an involvement of some of the Egyptian entities. Again, regarding the development of the projects itself, we have one of the leading Egyptian wind energy developers who's targeting 600 megawatts from these bilateral agreements. So again, yes, we are having a number of involvement of Egyptian entities, either through financing or through the construction activities or through developing projects themselves. And that's something which we are looking positively, of course, into. But again, maybe this is a chance just to comment on the local content and the localization of the renewable energy industries in Egypt, and that's something which we are we need to do a balance. Our current legislations promote, or so in order to promote the renewable energy investments, the government have announced that any renewable energy equipment which is imported into the country will only be charged by 2% for custom duties, and that's relatively low. On the other side, that's not helping the localization processes in the country. So even though we have a preferential procurement clauses in the general procurement law of the country, but there need to be a balance. And maybe after developing the first phase of renewables, reaching some of the targets, maybe midway over the next 7 years, there will be some more incentive for local manufacturing. We have tested that already in the area of concentrated solar power projects, and through some of the research projects which were carried by some of the research institutes and universities and the Academy for Science in Egypt, and it's clear that it's quite possible that producing equipment for the concentrated solar power projects is quite possible in Egypt. So that's something which I guess we're also working on, but we still need to do more on that.
Okay. Now, actually, I think there was a wake-up. Many questions came in all of a sudden. The first one is on the interconnector, on the HVDC line, the 3 gigawatt connection with Saudi. You mentioned it will be operational by end 2018, start 2019. The question is also specifically on which direction the power will flow.
It's a two-way. We're relying here on that the peak demand in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia takes place during the daytime, where relatively the Egyptian system is not heavily loaded. So we will be able to transfer or to transmit electricity from Egypt to the kingdom during that time. Well, during the evening time, the peak load in Egypt takes place, and based on that, the flow of electricity will come from the kingdom to Egypt. And also we rely on the time shift, or the 1 hour time shift. So that's helping as well.
Okay. Well, I think we have time for one more question only. And I think, well, it is always being asked at a number of occasions. It's you outlined the quota for the developers, so let's call it cash flow guarantees, and I think this is a very important, it's probably the most discussed point really to ensure bankability.
Well, the quota system is, we're working on developing that. The Law 203 indicated that we need to come up with a system, an implementation system to ensure the cash flow between the end users and the renewable energy developers, and that's what we were working on, and that will be issued in a separate legislation. Now, the first phase of it will be that quota percentage will be equal for all end users, so residential, commercial, industrial. Well, let's say when we start doing that, and we expect to do that in the next couple of months, the very first developer which will be affected by that will be the New and Renewable Energy Authority, which is a state entity, where we're already injecting to the system around 2% of the electric energy mix. So that quota system will reflect this 2%. By the end of December of this year, I think some of the feed-in tariff developer will be already online, and they will start adding to the percentage of renewables injected to the system, and that also will be reflected in this quota. But there will be a decree from the Cabinet of Ministers, not a law. They are responsible to issue this tariff or to accept that tariff. And this will always be announced 3 months before the end of each year.
Very good. So, well, I think Dr. Sobki is available later also. Then just to keep the time, I would like to invite the moderator of the first session. Thank you very much again, Dr. Sobki.
Thank you.